Well, hello, Minders. Welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor. Well, we're going to continue looking at this 10 color set, and I really appreciate all the comments. I usually don't respond to very many of them just because I don't have the time, but I do read them all. And thank you for your compliments. There were some great questions, which I did try to answer, and I really appreciate how all of you that have commented have told me how this has been helpful for you. I'm glad. I really want to be able to familiarize yourself with a set of colors, learn how to use them and mix with them. It's just a really important skill. And that's kind of what I want to add some support or a little extra info to today. I had not planned to make this episode, and I just feel like we need to talk about the color wheel. Several comments kind of mentioned the magic, or it seems, or the wonder, the excitement of, you mix this color and that, and oh, look what you get. And color mixing can seem pretty magical sometimes. I do want to demystify it a little bit, though, because if you go on thinking that it is just pure magic, you'll never figure it out. You'll never figure out, what can I do? What do I need to do? How can I get to certain colors? And that's what I want to teach you. You know, the best chefs, the best cooks, get to a point where they don't follow recipes anymore. Instead, they know what to put in it because they know what it'll do. It's great to follow a recipe. Most of us do that with cooking. And you can do that with color mixing, obviously. But what's even better is to understand why you put this in and why you put that in, so that you can start creating your own recipes. And the chief way to do that is with this color wheel. Again, I just want to address charts. I think charts are fine. You can explore and make some interesting discoveries with charts, but as a reference tool, while you're painting or while you're learning how to mix, it's a bit unwieldy. This is a little bit easier. In fact, I don't look at this very much anymore because this is in my head. This is like your multiplication tables of color. You commit them to memory, and eventually you can say, this times this equals this. And eventually you won't look at this so much. But this is an important roadmap. And I think when you're painting on the fly, to have this information either at your hand or in your head is invaluable. So I think it bears just looking at color wheel again. And what I want to do is also figure out where these items might sit on a color wheel. But more importantly, I want you to see how to take these, place them on a color wheel, and then figure out what that will do for you, what those color combinations or where they sit on the color wheel will do. All right, so I will have a link to this if this is a color wheel you're interested in. This is called the Watercolor Wheel. This is probably the most recognizable and easily found, at least in the States, color wheel. Not the Watercolor Wheel so much as they produce a standard one that's glossy. The Watercolor Wheel just has everything on a slightly more muted colors, kind of trying to simulate that drying shift, and it has a watercolor texture. Color theory and color terms, it's all here. And this color wheel is not perfect. I mean, it's got some drawbacks, but it is a general roadmap. It will get you in the ballpark, and it will help increase your understanding if you don't understand why certain colors mix and do what they do. This color wheel puts 12 colors on there, puts the 3 primaries, red, yellow, and blue. Now, please, some of you color mixing geeks out there, please don't take me to task on, oh, those aren't really color mixing primaries. I know that. I understand that the true color mixing primaries are probably more of a cyan, magenta, and yellow. This is not about that. This is about categorizing your colors. So let's not get into arguments and discussions about what the true primary mixing colors are, okay? Anyway, so this color wheel has the 3 traditional primaries, red, blue, and yellow. Then the 3 secondaries, green, orange, and violet. Then it's got the 6 tertiary colors, red, violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red, orange. More than enough to get you in the ballpark when you're talking and thinking about color mixing. Now, it's also got these little augmentations here, I guess you could call them. If you mix red with the color, when you line this up, if you mix yellow with the color, if you mix blue with the color, if you mix black with the color, and if you add water or tint it out. The one I find most helpful is the adding black. And in watercolor, you wouldn't actually do that, or you could, I guess, but that's not typical. I would think of this as adding the neutral tint or adding its exact complement, which might take a little exploration to figure out. So if you're adding neutral tint in this set, you're going to come up with something like this. Or if you found this color's exact complement, you're going to be more like this. And it also shows it on the back. So we were looking at orange. This is adding the complement. Orange, and again, or neutral tint will do the same thing. Now, just so everybody understands what we're talking about, in case there's still some of you out there who have no idea what I mean when I say a complement. A complement is the color on the exact opposite side of the color wheel. That's a complement. Complements cancel each other out. Theoretically, that's what they do. An exact complement, and if you get the right ratio, you'll end up with a gray, a very neutral color that doesn't lean one way or the other. That's the theory. In practice, it's a little bit trickier than that, because a lot of the pigments that come in watercolor tubes lean one way or the other to particular hues. They may be more powerful in tinting strength than its complement. You just run into things, and you'll think something's a complement, and actually you're choosing a near complement, little things like that. But if you get and find the exact complement of a color, and you start adjusting the ratio between them correctly, you'll eventually get a neutral. Now, once again, neutral tint in this set will do that too without biasing the color. And that's a good way. If you're wanting to really get an exact neutral without changing the hue, that's the way to do it. I like mixing complements for the interesting color casts I get, and then near complements will do similar things. What you want to do is figure out where these colors sit on this color wheel, and to get an idea of what its complement is. It's very important that you start training yourself to see color. A lot of times I will set my palette up even like a color wheel to an extent, because some things actually would go more in the middle. As you do that, as you start mixing, a lot of the mystery goes away. And if you're thinking, oh, I don't want the mystery to go away, well, that's all well and good. I understand. I love the magical kind of, and you will still get that. No matter how well you know color mixing or color charts or know your colors, you will still get the ooh and ah just of the beautiful colors. As you're painting, in the process of painting on the fly, knowing this without having to look at a recipe, just second nature painting and applying those color principles, putting them in your painting is just very, very satisfying. All right, let me show you what I've done. I've just taken a piece of watercolor paper. This is Kilimanjaro, and the reason I used Kilimanjaro is it's extra white or it's bright white. Doesn't matter. If you want to use natural white, that's fine. It'll still get you in the ballpark. All I did was use a compass and size this to the size of this inner circle here roughly. And then I just used the outer colors roughly as a template to divide mine up. And I'm hoping once I have these on the wheel, you'll see the advantages. It'll start to make sense in yet another way. This is probably the video I should have done first. But hopefully this will lend some clarity to those of you who are new and just getting into color mixing. Now, before you paint, clean off the top of your paints. If you followed my instructions on setting up M-gram paint and you let them dry for a good long time, this should be easy to do. Because they re-wet so quickly, you just rub water across the top. I like to wipe it off on a paper towel, rinse out my brush. It just takes any paint contamination from your mixing and gives you a clean color to start with. Again, this doesn't have to be scientifically perfect. It really doesn't take a lot to clean these off, unless they're really heavily contaminated. If you wanted to make sure, if you're really particular about getting these colors perfect without any contamination, then just squirt a little bit out of the tube somewhere, just for swatching purposes. Those colors are relatively clean now, and so we can start. So what I'm going to do is start with yellow. The yellow that I have, the Azo yellow, is pretty close to what I think a main color wheel yellow would be. So we're going to place that on here first. Now what goes down here is going to be its exact complement. And that's one way you can set this up. Another way is you can just do approximate. I'm going to paint it over here anyway. It really needs more blue in it. to be a perfect complement, but it's close enough. Red would normally go here and red orange here. Again, I don't have a perfect traditional red, so we're gonna go ahead though and put quinacridone rose right here. It's a cool red. That's actually a good mixing primary, but anyway, we'll put the quinacridone rose there and we'll put the scarlet pyrrole here. Since that's wet, I don't want to touch those right now. So I'm going to leave a white space. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the Indian yellow, which is going to be here. It's an orange yellow. And we're going to go ahead and put the azo green here. This is a yellow green. Yeah, I think we pretty much know now that ultramarine needs to go down here. The dioxazine purple. And I think you're going to see why on this sort of split color palette I chose phthalo green, because it fills this slot, this needed mixing slot right here very nicely. This would be right here a blue-green. This would be a blue-green, if you will. Again, not all these colors fit perfectly in these slots. But a truer green and a truer blue would fit there. You say, well, why not just do that? Why not just put like a truer green here, or split that between this and a more cyan? Well, it's because certain colors you come to know and use, like ultramarine, phthalo green to me, dioxazine purple. And what's more important to me is how easily I can get to these. Like orange. I don't, somebody mentioned why I don't have orange, and I thought it was pretty obvious. I don't need an orange. For one thing, orange I don't use very much, pure orange, and these are close enough that just tinting a little bit one way or the other would get me to an orange if I needed it. But I could produce brilliant secondaries anywhere. If I don't already have it, I could easily produce those. And I think I showed, like in the first video on mixing, how easy it is to produce other blues in here with these two. All right, so neutral tint, where does that go? Well, it goes right here. Keep in mind, on a color wheel, as you go towards the center, that represents neutralizing or graying out. So we're going to put it here. Now, in reality, M-Gram's neutral tint has a bit of a violet cast. So I'm going to sort of cheat it this way a little bit. And you might be saying, okay, what about red iron oxide? Well, that's an orange, or a red orange. But it's dark, it's deep, and it's somewhat more neutral. Not that much more neutral, but it is. So we're going to put it right here. Now, that is our color wheel. That is this 10 color set. And it's pretty accurate. And as you start mixing these complements, they may not be perfect, but they will get you in the ballpark. And as you mix and you don't get necessarily a perfect neutral, just start moving a little to one way or the other and see which way pulls it into a perfect neutral. Again, I really use neutral tint to do that, and only use complements to give me other hues that usually do have a cast. So I kind of like using near complements anyway. We talked about complements being on the opposite side of the wheel. Colors next to each other are analogous. And a good way to keep colors brilliant is to mix analogous colors that are full strength. You saw in my first video when I mixed ultramarine and Indian yellow, when I bypassed this for the green, I got almost gray, almost completely gray. It was just a very muted sort of olive green. Well, that's why. So if I wanted more green, I'm going to have to come this way. When we get to browns, we'll talk about browns, but these colors and these colors make an interesting brown. Primarily this and this, because their complements are near complements. These are near complements. They're going to make interesting browns. And again, we'll get to that. If you mix these with your near analogous colors, you're going to get a very brilliant red-violet in here. Same here. You want a brilliant orange, you're going to mix these two near analogous colors. And that's the rule. You know, the further away you get from a color on the color wheel, the less brilliant it is going to be, the more they're going to start neutralizing each other out, either into browns or neutrals. If you still have really a lot of trouble just seeing colors and seeing where they go, this is a product you might be interested in. I tend to think it's a little pricey. Here in the US, like $22, and it's just a laminated piece of paper. But he's done a pretty good job. This is the Stephen Quiller Wheel. He's done a pretty good job of taking a lot of common watercolor pigments and placing them on the color wheel where you may not be able to figure out where it goes. And he's got most of the common colors in here, you know, the phthalos, the cadmiums, you name it, the quinacridons. The drawback to this is that you will get variance even among brands, so this is not perfect either. Again, when it comes to any kind of color wheel, you just need to be satisfied with knowing that you're getting yourself in the ballpark, you know, in the general vicinity of where color goes. I'll put a link to this below if you're really interested. But I do urge you, if you can, to try to figure out these kind of things on your own. Figure out where these go on the color wheel on your own. If you really don't want to do that and you get stuck, you know, there's products like this available. All right, so there we are. And again, just a little recap. Each of these colors, as we get towards the center and mix the complement, become more neutral. The neutral tint should remind you of that. And as an exercise, you might experiment with these complements. Some of them are not perfect, as I've mentioned. They're near complement. Obviously, or at least it should be obvious, it may not be. The complement of this is not on your palette, so it would be a mix of these two. So it would be a more red-violet, will get you closer to Azo Green's complement. Same goes with quinacridone rose, more of a green, yellow-green, less of a blue-green would be a complement here. So a mix somewhere in here. And just play with these complements. And see the hues you come up with. You'll come up with some really interesting things. All right, I hope this clarified things. I hope this clarified what these choices mean in color mixing. I hope this clarified and maybe helped you understand a little bit, especially you newbies, on how to mix. You know, you can make one of these and just kind of have it sitting over, propped up next to something, so you can quickly determine a complement. If you want to gray something out or desaturate something like the phthalo green, just have it off to the side as something you can glance at as a quick reference. Thanks everybody, appreciate you watching. Thanks so much patrons for your support, and we will see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.